When the Oberkommando des Heers, the German Army High Command, approached Krupp in 1934, they laid out specifications that seemed like science fiction. The weapon had to fire shells capable of piercing 1 meter of solid steel armor or 7 meters of reinforced concrete. It had to do this from a safe distance, far beyond the range of enemy defenses. And it had to be mobile. Engineer Erich Müller was given the impossible task. He sat down with his team and did the calculations. The numbers were staggering. To achieve the required destructive power, they would need an 80-centimeter caliber cannon, the largest rifled gun barrel ever conceived. The shells would weigh 7 tons each. The barrel would have to be 30 meters long, and the entire weapon would weigh over 1,000 tons. For perspective, that's heavier than 10 modern main battle tanks combined. Moving such a beast was a nightmare. Müller's solution was radical. Mounted on twin parallel railway tracks with 80 wheels spread across 8 massive bogies. The gun couldn't rotate left or right. To aim it, you had to literally bend the railway tracks into a curve. Krupp presented the proposal to the German High Command. Following traditional German arms manufacturing customs, they offered to build the first gun for free, with payment only negotiated if more were ordered. The High Command hesitated. The project seemed too ambitious, too expensive, too insane. Then, in March 1936, Hitler himself visited the Krupp factories in Essen. He asked one simple question: "Can you really build this?" Krupp said yes, and Hitler gave the order. By early 1937, development of Schwerer Gustav had officially begun. Chapter 3: Birth of the Monster. Production started in mid-1937. The original completion date was set for 1940, but reality quickly interfered. The sheer scale of the components created logistical nightmares. Steel sheets of unprecedented size had to be forged. Precision machining had to be performed on parts weighing dozens of tons. By late 1939, a test model was finally ready. Krupp sent it to the Hillersleben, proving grounds for evaluation. The tests were stunning. A single shell fired from high elevation punched straight through a meter of armor plate. Another penetrated 7 meters of reinforced concrete as if it were paper. The gun worked. The monster was real. In 1941, Hitler himself traveled to the Rügenwalde Proving Ground to witness the Schwerer Gustav in action. Standing beside Alfred Krupp, the Führer watched as the massive barrel roared and sent a 7,100-kilogram shell screaming across nearly 40 kilometers of Polish countryside. Hitler was mesmerized. He immediately ordered 2 of these guns. The first, Schwerer Gustav, was delivered free of charge, as promised. The second, named Dora, after Erich Müller's wife, carried a price tag of 7 million Reichsmark. In 2015 dollars, that's approximately 24 million. The weapon was a mechanical marvel. The barrel stretched over 100 feet, longer than any gun barrel ever built. The shells stood taller than 2 soldiers and weighed 20,000 pounds each. Loading a single round required a coordinated effort involving dozens of men and specialized machinery. But by the time Schwerer Gustav was ready for combat, the war had already moved on. Chapter 4: The War That Didn't Wait. The Schwerer Gustav was designed to destroy the Maginot Line. But when Hitler finally invaded France in May 1940, the gun wasn't ready yet. Ironically, it didn't matter. German forces bypassed the Maginot Line entirely, sweeping through Belgium and the Ardennes forest. France fell in 6 weeks, without the need for Hitler's superweapon. But Hitler still wanted his giant gun to see action. He wanted the world to witness the might of German engineering. He wanted his enemies to tremble. So in 1942, he found the perfect stage. Sevastopol, the Soviet port city on the Crimean Peninsula, was one of the most heavily fortified positions on the Eastern Front. Massive coastal batteries, underground ammunition depots, concrete bunkers designed to withstand naval bombardment. It was time for Schwerer Gustav to prove itself. Chapter 5. The Siege of Sevastopol. In early March 1942, a train 25 cars long rolled into the Isthmus of Perekop. On board was Schwerer Gustav, disassembled into 5 massive sections, accompanied by Heavy Artillery Unit E-672. For an entire month, the gun sat idle, while 4,000 soldiers constructed a special railway line from Simferopol to the outskirts of Sevastopol. The tracks had to be reinforced. Curves had to be precisely calculated. Air defenses had to be positioned. By April, the gun was finally in place, and then came 5 more weeks of assembly, calibration, and preparation. On June 5, 1942, Schwerer Gustav fired its first shot in combat. The sound was apocalyptic. A shockwave rippled across the Crimean landscape. The 7-ton shell arced through the sky and struck a Soviet ammunition depot buried 98 feet underground. The entire facility collapsed. Over the next month, Schwerer Gustav fired 48 rounds. Each shot required 500 soldiers to load, aim, and fire. Thousands more provided air defense and logistical support. By July 4th, Sevastopol had fallen. The city lay in ruins, but victory came at a cost. The barrel of Schwerer Gustav was heavily worn from continuous use. It had to be sent back to Essen for replacement. And then the problems began. Chapter 6. The Fatal Flaws. As impressive as Schwerer Gustav was, the German army quickly realized it was a logistical nightmare. Problem 1. Manpower. Firing the gun required 500 soldiers. Protecting and operating it required 4,000 more. That's an entire brigade tied up for a single artillery piece. Problem 2. Mobility. Moving the gun required specially constructed railway tracks. Assembly took 4 days. If the terrain was difficult or the rails were destroyed, the weapon was useless. Problem 3. Rate of fire. Calibrating the barrel between shots took hours. The gun could only fire 14 rounds per day, less firepower than a squadron of bombers. Problem 4. Cost. Each shell was enormously expensive to produce. As Germany came under increasing pressure, resources had to be diverted to tanks, planes, and infantry weapons. Problem 5. Predictability. The rails made German positions easy to detect. Allied aircraft could spot the construction from miles away. After Sevastopol, Schwerer Gustav was sent north to participate in the Siege of Leningrad. It spent the winter near the Soviet city, but the attack was called off. Dora, the second gun, was deployed near Stalingrad in August 1942. But before it could fire a single shot in anger, Soviet forces began encircling the German army. Dora was hastily dismantled and evacuated. The monster that was supposed to win the war had become a burden. Chapter 7. The End of the Giant. By April 1945, the Third Reich was collapsing. Soviet forces were advancing from the east, American troops from the west. On April 14, 1945, German commanders made a decision. Schwerer, Gustav, and Dora could not be allowed to fall into enemy hands. Both guns were deliberately destroyed. Schwerer Gustav's wreckage was discovered by Soviet forces on April 22 in a forest near Auerbach and Chemnitz. Soviet weapons specialists examined the ruins, then shipped them to Merseburg. After that, they vanished from history. Dora's remains were found by American troops near Leipzig on April 19th. Parts of the wreckage are now displayed in the Dresden Military History Museum, the largest gun ever built, reduced to scrap metal in a German forest. Epilogue. The Lesson of the Monster Schwerer. Gustav was a symbol of everything wrong with the German war machine. Over-engineered, impractical, and built for spectacle rather than strategy. It was designed to break the Maginot Line, which fell without it. It was deployed to Sevastopol, which would have fallen anyway. It consumed resources that could have built hundreds of tanks or aircraft, yet it remains one of the most fascinating weapons ever conceived. A machine so large it defied belief. A gun that required a small army just to fire. In the end, Schwerer Gustav proved one thing: size isn't everything. Wars aren't won by monsters. They're won by logistics, strategy, and the ability to adapt. And no matter how big the gun, it can't stop the inevitable.